to introduce Liz Reynolds and Secretary Yvonne Hao for a discussion on U.S. industrial transformation at a crossroads. So come on up.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. And it's really a pleasure to be with Secretary Hao. I'm Liz Reynolds. I'm a professor at MIT and a former special assistant to the president in the Biden administration for manufacturing, appropriate for this conversation, and importantly, a strategic advisor to TULIP. And Secretary Hao has been in the position of Secretary of Economic Development for Massachusetts for the last couple of years. And what I might argue is one of the most exciting times for manufacturing in the US and certainly in the state of Massachusetts. So before we get going, though, it might be great to hear a little bit about your background, because as I was saying, I think you've got a fairly unique background for a Secretary of Economic Development, and it really plays well, certainly for this state.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm just thrilled to be here. When Liz told me about this event, I was like, wait, I have to come. And just walking through the TULIP offices and seeing all the different companies and the demos, I love the energy and the vibe, and it just reflects the vibrance of this sector for our state. Of course, I'm hugely grateful to Liz and to TULIP, and excited to be with all of you here today. So yes, I am an unusual path to state government. I never thought I would be in government. I have been in business my whole career, so I've been in large public companies, I've been in startups, I've been in investment firms, and I randomly got a phone call on my cell phone from a number I didn't recognize, and thought it was maybe the doctor's office. I picked it up, and it turned out to be Maura Healey, and she had just gotten elected. So I started in January of 2023, and I'm learning a ton about state government. It's a tremendous honor to get a chance to serve our state. And I have a lot to learn in state government, but the one thing that's been interesting is because I've been in businesses my whole life, the one thing that's been very helpful is for me to be able to convey to all of our legislators and all of my other cabinet secretaries and to the governor and the team what it's like to be in a business. So when you wake up in a business every day, whether you're a CEO or CFO or whatever role you have, you don't wake up every day thinking like, oh, like today is Tuesday. Well, what will I do to help Massachusetts today? Like that is not your job. If you're doing that, you probably should not be in that business. But businesses are hustling every day to try to survive, to make your customers happy, to make your employees happy, to hit your metrics, to drive value for your shareholders. And so, really, what I talk about all the time in our team is that we are in public service. The part of the public that we serve in my office is the economy, which is really all of our businesses. So you all are my customer. So really, you all should be focused on all the things you're doing, but our job in state government is to make your life easier. We should be supporting you and helping you do everything you want to do better and faster and cheaper and more successfully here in our state. So that is kind of the lens I bring to this role.
It's fantastic. And I've heard you say in other venues that, yes, you've worked in a lot of different companies, you've invested in a lot of companies. Some of your favorite time is spent on the shop floor of manufacturers. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes, that is my happy place. So I grew up, I started out my career at McKinsey, which I think is a sponsor today here, which is awesome, but in the Midwest office. So I spent a lot of time in real manufacturing, Midwestern manufacturing settings. So chemicals, industrials, automotive. And then I went to Honeywell, which is a $30+ billion conglomerate, and I spent time visiting manufacturing facilities around the world for aerospace, for home and commercial industrial products, for automotive and turbo, security products. All over the world I visited, and I became Six Sigma trained and Lean trained and got my green belt and spent a ton of time thinking through operations. Then I went to Bain Capital, and I spent a lot of time with manufacturing companies there as well, clothing and apparel, consumer electronics, plastic packaging. And then I joined this startup called PillPack, and we were a healthcare company. We were an online pharmacy, but pharmacy is kind of manufacturing. We manufactured these shipments of packets of people's prescription drugs. And so I love manufacturing for a couple reasons. I think one is that it's so tangible. It's so real to see what you're doing. It's not some imaginary thing. It's not a bunch of lines of code. You can see on the floor exactly what's happening. There's something very rewarding and concrete about that. I also love that it is a world where there's continuous improvement. And the improvement comes not from like me sitting in some fancy office on the top floor. The improvement comes from people on the front lines who are seeing the action every day, and they're the ones closest to the product, and they're the ones who have the best insights. So I love the kind of, you're always tinkering, always finding ideas and ways, and it's coming bottoms up. And the most important thing I love about it is that it's a culture. So when you've been in a good manufacturing facility, it just is a beautiful thing. It feels like when you're on a soccer team and everyone knows exactly what their role is and you're passing the ball and you don't even have to look at each other. There's like a joy in the team feeling such pride in the work they do. And these are people of all different kinds of backgrounds, and you have, managers and engineers and, kind of people with PhDs, but you also have people who may not have graduated high school or college, and everyone is treated the same and everybody's working together to deliver awesome product. I think there's something so inspiring about that. So I love, that's my happy place. I love manufacturing.
Yeah, well, you've hit a couple of the really key, I think, terms from today already. Continuous improvement, culture. I mean, all of those things we've heard about this morning that are so critical to the success. And you need to layer into that and on that the digital.
Yep.
But without those, other key pieces, it doesn't work.
Yep.
And so it's really it's sort of a holistic approach, which is why I've always enjoyed Natan's vision for this. You and I were in at Gillette Stadium just a couple weeks ago. It was pretty awesome for the Massachusetts Mashup, which is the annual meeting of the manufacturing ecosystem here in the state. One that is, perhaps similar to what we'd find in other states, but I think with a much more innovation, entrepreneurial kind of thread through it. What would you take away? I know you also had your meeting of the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative,
Yep.
which you co-chair with Mike Tomasi. I think
Yep.
Natan just joined it. What would you say was the kind of the vibe and also the takeaways from your perspective?
Oh, it was so awesome. I mean, first of all, anyone who wasn't there should try to go there next year. It's pretty awesome anytime that you're in Gillette Stadium, but to be there for this event with so many manufacturing companies from across the state of all different types of products that they're manufacturing. And then the most exciting part for me was that we had, I think, almost 500 students that were there. And the key here is to get high school and college and community college students interested in manufacturing careers early on. And for those students to be hands-on, like playing with things and doing different demos and getting excited, I think there's maybe a misperception that manufacturing is like, people think like, oh, coal mines or something, like really dirty. But when you see these kids and their eyes light up and they're actually, working with all kinds of cool tools and making things, getting that young talent into this sector early, I think was really a key part of this.
Yeah, I think that the whole attraction of that generation, which manufacturing has to do, they have a lot of options now.
Yeah.
And particularly in the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah, and I think we're really lucky in our state. We have the best talent. So we're the #1 in terms of public education, and we have incredible universities and colleges. We have over 500,000 of not the country's, but the world's best and brightest coming to study here. And manufacturing is a big part of our state economy. It's over $50 billion of our GDP. This sector employs hundreds of thousands of people, and we do a lot to support it from our state perspective. So within one of our state quasis, Mass Tech, we have an entire center. We were just talking about the Advanced Manufacturing Center, that we have a separate board, including all these CEOs of different manufacturing companies. And the goal of this center is to give out all kinds of grants to manufacturing businesses across the state. So we've given out over $100 million to several hundred companies for all different kinds of purposes, to help with capital equipment, to help with workforce and training, to help with cybersecurity, to help with upgrading tools. So this is digital and AI. So this is a key part of how our state works with this sector. And what I always say is that we're a powerful state. But we're not a huge state. We're not the biggest state. So we can't do everything for everybody all the time. We have to think about what is our competitive advantage? What are the things that we're naturally good at that we should lean into? And so, no offense to anyone here, but I always say to people, like, if you're trying to do like super low wage, very vanilla, commodity, like, cheap type of labor manufacturing, maybe you'll find that in Massachusetts, but that's probably other states will be better at that. What we're really good at is thinking through more sophisticated advanced manufacturing, where you need a trained workforce, where you need a steady workforce, where you need collaboration across the universities and research centers and R&D linking to manufacturing. And if you look at where we play, it's in all kinds of these high-tech areas around robotics and manufacturing, around life sciences and manufacturing, climate tech and manufacturing, combining AI and manufacturing, precision, chips and semiconductors and manufacturing. So that is really where we excel. And the thing that's great about that is those spaces are all growing. So the macro, we have a tailwind, and those are all higher margin manufacturing places where we can really compete. So that's kind of where we want to play and where our state is trying to make sure that we do our part to have all the resources and to support this sector.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that macro perspective.
Yeah.
Since I lived it in DC, I went down as special assistant to the president for manufacturing, as I said, with this great agenda for manufacturing for the country. And from day one to my last day, it was supply chain crises left and right. Right, and we saw it. It was the ports, it was rail, it was baby formula, it was paper, It was semiconductors, obviously. And I think that when you talk about, we've got a tailwind, the whole recognition now of supply chain resilience and what the country needs to do, the recognition of climate change and the impact on our infrastructure, on the need for renewables, the geopolitical changes, Russia, Ukraine, China, all of these things are adding up to a real tailwind that says U.S. manufacturing needs to transform and needs to transform now.
Yep.
And so I know the state has also benefited from some of the recent legislation, the investment in rebuilding semiconductor capacity here, as well as investing in clean energy. And a number of companies have now announced that they're actually, opening up manufacturing stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that, and also how we, like Tulip, you want to start the innovative company here, but we also want to scale them here. What you see on the horizon.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, first of all, I do think, we should thank Liz and the administration, because I think having been someone who's grown up in manufacturing for many decades, we kind of had a very laissez-faire approach, where other countries were very intentional about building their manufacturing center, and we were not. And so a lot of those jobs move overseas, and Liz mentioned there's a supply chain aspect of it, there's a global security aspect of it. There's also just I think a lot about our state. We are very lucky, and we're actually the wealthiest state now. We also, unfortunately, are a pretty income unequal state, along with many others. And I think a lot about the divisiveness in the country, and income inequality, I think, is a driver of that. And part of the income inequality is a lot of these really solid, good middle-class jobs left our country. So I'm very grateful that this Biden administration has really been so intentional about having a clear industrial strategy and reinvesting in manufacturing for all of those reasons, including also climate change, which is kind of the existential crisis of our time. So we in Massachusetts have been really working hard to make sure we take advantage of this moment, and also that we do our part for our country. And we are really lucky because we have wicked smart people who are doing this amazing work. And so we are trying very hard to partner with the federal government. We fought and competed hard, and we were very grateful that we were awarded the Chips and Science Microelectronics Commons Award. So we are one of the hubs there, and we did a partnership with many states, but we really led that effort. And that's already paid off. Just maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were awarded another $40 million from the federal government for many of our companies and universities around manufacturing and investing in research and equipment. We also fought really hard, and we're really grateful. We won a hub for ARPA-H, which is the Biden administration healthcare initiative, which includes a bunch around manufacturing and medical device and pharmaceuticals. And we've done a lot of work on really winning the IRA grants. So for climate change, I was just on a Clean Energy Center board meeting call, and we were talking about all the different grants that we've won for all kinds of infrastructure projects, bridges, decarbonizing, solar, all of those. So this is a big priority for us. And it is interesting for us. We've had a history of many companies starting here. And in fact, if you think about software, we didn't win in the software or the internet game, but a lot of those companies, Facebook, Stripe, started here. And a lot of those companies were started by graduates of our universities. So we didn't do so well there, but we have done really well in life sciences because we were intentional. And I actually think life sciences is a better industry for us because it's more mission driven, it's more linked to our hospitals, and there's a manufacturing component. So you create jobs of all kinds. We now are trying to lean into climate tech in a similar way that we did with life sciences for all those same reasons. We have all the ingredients here. We care about fighting climate change. We want to make sure that we do the right thing and also create all kinds of jobs, which include manufacturing jobs. So our goal is to help people spin out their companies from universities, from their labs, and start here, but then really scale here. And I've been a COO, even at PillPack, and the last thing you want to do when you're trying to start a company and you're hyperscaling and you're trying to get customer product market fit, the last thing you want to do is get on a plane and fly to Asia, or get on a plane and fly to North Carolina and deal with the time zone and finger pointing and these operations people, you sucked and you screwed it up. Oh no, the engineers, you guys suck and you don't understand. It's so much easier to be able to drive an hour or 2 hours to Devens or to Holyoke or to Fitchburg or to Pittsfield or to Andover or to Westboro, and to be able to sit down in person to say, okay, what's going on? Is there a bug in the software? Let's tinker with it. What's going on with the line flow? Let's figure it out. And we're all on one team. And by the way, after this, we're going to go out and have a beer. Like, we're all on the same team. You get such faster cycles. It's way better for business. And we have lots of parts of the state that are actually way cheaper than Boston, Cambridge, and not that far. And so some of our success stories is we have companies now, many climate tech ones that have had labs and started out at Boston, Cambridge, and now have big manufacturing sites in all the different parts of the state, and same with life sciences. So that's really the template that we want to support.
So let me ask, because you will have insight into this, we did some research at MIT that showed this wonderful, ability to raise that first even 50, 60, 70 million from VC for some of these sort of hard tech companies, hardware, software related companies. And then the companies would hit this really tough period when they are having to spend tens of millions, if not 100 millions, on a pilot facility demonstrating at scale. And until recently, really, the VC community has been, they want asset-light investments. They're not interested in these long-term, large CapEx investments, et cetera. And as I said, we're seeing some shifting there, I think, in the community. But what do you think? What are you seeing, or what do you hope is kind of happening? What is it going to take to get more VC into that mix for later stage growth capital? I
mean, this is a really interesting question. So so in different parts of my career, I've been an investor at a private equity firm, a growth equity firm, and an advisor at a venture firm. And it's hard because when you're at an investment firm, you're under tremendous pressure to get returns for your limited partners. And when you're making a bet on a company, you can look at a SaaS company and it's like, there's no inventory, there's no CapEx, it's a bunch, small bunch of humans, not that many of them. And then they roll out software, which is super high margin, just generates a ton of cash flow and is pretty sticky. So you have that, or you can do something that's manufacturing where you have a ton of inventory, a ton of working capital, you have lots of humans who are working in the operations center. Now you have to build out facilities, so you need CapEx, and it's really hard because you have to make sure that it works and you don't have defects and things. So there's a kind of I think for investors, it just seems like way lower risk to kind of put money into SaaS businesses. However, I do think that's changing for a couple of reasons, and I'm very grateful it is. One is that there's just so much money sitting on the sidelines. There's so much money in venture and private equity, and I think they need to put it somewhere. And the SaaS businesses, all the competition is there, and the valuations and the multiples are so nuts. Meanwhile, the federal government is setting the stage by investing, and the states are setting the stage by investing. They're starting to see manufacturing coming back, and there are way more opportunities there. So I think the money is sitting on sidelines, but is starting to come in. The other thing I think that is interesting is that, maybe a couple of things. One is that in life sciences, they haven't had the same problem. So I was kind of trying to figure out, why is this not a thing in life sciences? Because in life sciences, you also have to manufacture. There's also massive risk. You also have to have a lot of inventory, and you have to have humans, and you have to have facilities. The difference in life sciences is that there's a clear path and gateway. So if you get clinical trials and FDA and you make it through, there's a massive pot of gold at the end of it. The thing that's hard about climate tech and the thing that's harder about other manufacturing is that there's no clear gate. So there's no obvious way for an investor to say, I can tell you're going to hit this, and then there's going to be this thing. So one of the things that's hardest, I think, is that how do we help our manufacturing companies and climate tech companies prove that this is working? And so one of the things we've been discussing at the state is, how do we help use the state's power as a customer? Because if we can be an early customer and be an early adopter and help startups get a huge chunk of revenue, that's like the FDA. That's like saying, hey, this works. We believe in it so much that we're going to be the demo site and we're going to validate and have data. And that's like gives kind of the comfort and security for bigger investors to come in. So that's something we've been thinking a lot about. And the other thing I would say is interesting. I was at an event yesterday with a very large bank, 2 large banks, and they were saying that with climate tech, we're still in such early innings, and the way that people finance investments is adapted to SaaS, it's adapted to kind of all these older industries. We haven't really come up with the financial products yet to think about how to invest in climate tech, because there are big kind of step changes in building out a big pilot facility and investing a huge amount in CapEx and energy and everything else. And so these investors and these banks are trying to figure out, like, this is going to be a big industry. They're going to be multi-billion global, big companies are going to come out of this. We need to figure out some new financial products. So are there ways that we can have, different financial tools? We were calling it, people used to call it the Valley of Death. They were saying that sounds too morbid. So they were calling it the missing middle. How do you get the missing middle? And so one of the banks, that was JP Morgan Chase, was saying they're developing a new group to figure out how to allocate risk and create funding products just for that missing middle for climate tech. So I think we're trying to, this space is still so new. Yep. The financial industry is catching up to the new space. But once we have a few winners, and we have several already in Massachusetts, once we have some big IPOs, like, people will wake up, and I think the money will start to really come in.
Yeah, it is exciting. I think there is a lot of innovation going on, as you said.
Totally.
Like in the private sector, so people are talking about first-of-a-kind funds,
yes,
or even, tech insurance,
yep,
things like this that are going to help us bridge that gap. Particularly, we have the early stage, we have the infrastructure funders, yep, but the in-between is really challenging.
Yep.
What's interesting also is to see the innovation occurring at the public sector side. Meaning, since this problem has been identified for a while, but you'll see just in the last couple of years. So, the Department of Energy set up an Office of Clean Energy demonstration. Yep. $28 billion to bring some capital to this demonstration question. The Department of Defense, for the first time, creating an Office of Strategic Capital, because they've always been there with DARPA, with the early seeding of funding, and then they're there at the end when you have your product, and they say, acquisitions, we'd love to do that. But in between, it's been really hard, particularly a lot of our companies in this state. So I completely agree with you. It's a very exciting time in that space. And also I gather, you were out at Sublime recently.
Yes.
Decarbonized cement, which is exciting. Even the Buy Clean initiatives by the federal government are really trying to help de-risk some of this new technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many opportunities, and we have so many super innovative companies. So Sublime, decarbonizing cement. We have Boston Metal, decarbonizing steel. We have Form Energy on the battery side. We have Ascend. We have, the list goes on and on. Every week I visit tons of these companies. They all have such groundbreaking, transformative technology that if we can just help them demonstrate, the success of it and scale it up at a price that's economic, this could transform so many different industries.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, we mentioned it earlier, but the whole relationship between technology and the workers. And I was really excited in the last couple of talks where we just heard people talking, you have to keep the human in the loop. Mm-hmm. And we're augmenting workers, et cetera. And developing a technology not to get rid of the worker, but actually to augmenting the worker. What do you see as sort of the opportunity and the challenge for the new kind of manufacturing worker that we need in the state of Massachusetts?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. So I'll just give an example. So last year we did a state economic development plan, which Liz was on our council, which is amazing because she brought so much perspective and insight. But one of the things that came up across all of our different, sector meeting groups and regional meeting groups was this concept of AI. And so we did a lot of analysis, and we kind of figured out, okay, AI is not some passing fad. It's not going to disappear. This is a very powerful new technology that it's not even that new. But the compute power has finally caught up. That we're now at the beginning of a stage where this technology probably will transform so much of what we do, how we work, how we live. It's almost like the internet in the early 90s. Like, we're just in early days. It's hard to predict. And so the governor kicked off a statewide AI task force to really bring together key leaders from all the different sectors and all different regions to talk about what should we be doing as a state around AI. And our ingoing view was that we're not going in to try to defend ourselves against AI. We're not trying to protect ourselves and regulate it and control it or ignore it. We're trying to embrace new technologies, but to use it for good, to embrace it in good ways. That's what we do in Massachusetts. And so the task force has been underway, and a couple things I'd say. One is that the mantra that we've been talking about, because workforce and talent is our secret sauce. So there's a lot of questions about, is AI gonna take away, the need for all of our awesome Massachusetts talent? And the thing we've been saying, the mantra we've been saying is, AI is not gonna take jobs. AI is gonna take jobs from people who don't know AI. And so I think there's gonna be more need than ever for humans, but humans who understand how to work with AI and how to generate AI and how to leverage AI in smart ways. And so a lot of the recommendations haven't been published yet, but we're working on the report. A lot of the priority and focus is going to be on how do we prepare all of our different types of workforce to be savvy on AI. Again, starting earlier on, not just in PhDs in college or community college, but even in high schools and middle schools. How do we start to get our workforce familiar and comfortable and ready to embrace and leverage it? The second thing is that we need our companies to adopt AI and to adopt it in smart, good ways. So we are right now, again, working on a set of recommendations around what can the state do to help support that. So can we help with compute power and making that accessible and easy and available for companies to test algorithms and test models and to run experiments? Could we, we're doing a ton of workforce training, that's on the deck. Could we also convene and bring sectors together to share learnings about how are you using AI to reduce errors, to improve quality, to help your customers? And so thinking through what we as a state can be doing. And we are probably not going to play in the kind of horizontal chat GPT like AI part. That's not really what we do. What we're really good at is leveraging technologies to solve really hard, really important problems. So we're thinking about how do we help our companies leverage AI to fight climate change, to cure disease, to take care of people in hospitals, to educate people in schools and universities, to take care of people's financial health in our banks. And so really in all the sectors that we lead in already, how do we work together to leverage AI to help those sectors do an even better job of solving those problems? So that's what we're really focused on. And I think a lot about two different examples. One is that I was reading an article where they were saying that when ATMs came out like decades ago in the 80s and 90s, people were worried that all bank branches will close and we'll have no more jobs for bank tellers. Well, it's been a couple decades. There's more bank branches than there ever have been, and there's more bank tellers than there ever been. Their job has changed. They're not just giving you $20 anymore. They're now focused on much more sophisticated, financial counseling. And same with when I was CEO at PillPack. We actually dabbled a lot with machine learning at the time and kind of automated tools and robotics. And the conversation we had is that there are many jobs that a human should not do. Like we had one job when I first joined where a human sat in front of a screen for 8 hours a day on a shift, looking at a pack that was a photograph of a pack of pills, 5 pills in a pack, they all look the same, and then what it should look like. And the human had to look and compare and then hit green or red. No human should do that. It will drive you insane, and also you're gonna make an error because you're gonna get so bored at some point. That should all be automated by software. And instead, humans should be doing the more sophisticated things that require empathy, talking to a customer who's really worried about being sick, or figuring out 20 different medications and how they interact with each other. And so figuring out how do we actually make better jobs that are more interesting and more rewarding and hopefully higher paying, and then how do we use AI for everything else? Like that's part of the thing that we want to try to figure out with our AI task force.
I amen to all of that. And I think we're in a great place to try and make that happen, find that path forward, and let the technology meet the worker, as opposed to the worker having to go meet the technology. I think that's really what a lot of people here are working on. I think that's really...
the other thing that I think is really interesting for us is that we also right now, like many other places, we have a workforce shortage. Our problem isn't that, we have so many people sitting around. Our problem is that none of our companies can hire enough people. And so let's start there. Like if there's AI that can be used to just fill some of the workforce gap, that's an easy place and you're not impacting anybody. But so there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, and with predictions right now that we're going to have about 2 million unfilled manufacturing jobs.
Totally.
2030, this is the reality. Just to follow up on that for 1 second also, one of the big issues that I think we have here is that, we've set these great goals as a country. We're trying to rebuild in a number of different areas, whether it's defense, energy, semiconductors, et cetera. And the backbone of that, of our ability to do that, is the small and medium-sized firm. Mm-hmm. And you know, as well as anybody and people here too, that the barriers to adoption of technology for the SME are much greater than for the large firm. The understanding the ROI, having the capital for it. So I think, and I hope that sort of an AI-focused task force is really figuring out what's the incentive to help the SME. Because we heard from Roche, it's not easy. But even for the SME, can we bring dollars for integration? Can we bring dollars for training? How do we really provide that path forward? Because without that transition for the SMEs, I think we're going to have a tougher time doing this.
I couldn't agree more. And especially in our state, our small and medium enterprises are the majority of our companies. They're the majority of our employees. And especially in manufacturing, so much of what we have is all of the different components along the value chain. A lot of them are family-owned, multi-generational businesses that have really specialized on something really awesome and are key parts of the supply chain. And so a couple of things I'd say. One is on chips and science, we have some very large, big multinational public companies who are anchoring that effort. We have all kinds of small and medium enterprises who are part of that and who are applying for grants. And so if anyone's interested in chips and science and microelectronics commons, MassTech has a whole team there that's helping people get plugged in and to apply for grants. The other thing I would say is that a lot of the focus of the Advanced Manufacturing Center is really on giving grants to these small and medium enterprises around workforce training, around digital kind of investments, around capital equipment to upgrade. So that is exactly where we're focused in terms of our state support.
That's fantastic. Okay. At this point, why don't we open it up if there are any questions from the audience for the Secretary on what we've just been. Yes, please. And please identify yourself.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Will Knight with Litmus Automation Software. So we're always thinking about how do we make things more efficient, scalable, et cetera. So kind of a recent news was the port strike, which part's about wages, which it seems like they addressed. The other part is about automation and more efficiency and potentially safety, et cetera. If you were part of those discussions, how would you talk about the benefits of the automation, longer term? Short term, I understand the pain, but how do you think about that and talking to companies about investing in automation that helps grow the ecosystem even more broadly?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And I was not involved in the negotiations, thankfully, because those are probably really complicated. But one of the things we thought we were very intentional about was in our state AI task force, we have several union leaders who are representatives there. And I think it's really important because so much of the progress that you make in manufacturing and in these businesses starts from the front line. And at PillPack too, if we can't get people in the front line, we can invest all we want in all the fancy tools and all the robotics and all the software. If people don't want to use them and they don't believe in them and they feel like they're taking away their jobs, nothing is going to work. And so it's been really helpful to actually have these voices from the labor unions as part of the conversation. And I think we started off with a lot of people being very skeptical and being very afraid and saying, well, this is the enemy and what are we going to do to fight this? And I think we've come around to say, wait a minute, there's a lot of opportunities here, and also it's going to happen anyways. So we have a choice. We can either bury our head or we can figure out how to make this awesome for all of our employees and all of our workers everywhere. And so that is the conversation we're trying to have. But the devil's in the details. I mean, firsthand, as I had to negotiate with so many different PillPack teams about this, is how do you actually really get down to people understanding the technology and figuring out how it helps them do a better job and helps them have better, better satisfaction and better results. So that's the work that has to be done.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I would just say that there are examples in the port area as well where, if you can give people that trust and security that they are going to be fine here, And we're going to use the automation, we're going to use the technology to augment the workers. You may have a reduction in the rate of growth of jobs, but actually you're trying to grow the pie. And in the end, if you can increase productivity, you're going to increase wages. And that's going to be the path forward for the US. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Chika. I currently work at Moderna. So I think you touched on a couple things I wanted to bring up, and maybe they're interrelated. So the first thing is the amount of grant money that's coming into the state, both from the federal government and then as well as the Massachusetts government providing to local state businesses, and income inequality. So my question for you is, as a representative of the government, how do you ensure that the money that you're providing to businesses actually contributes directly to wage growth of workers, rather than feeding into simply shareholder value and executive pay?
Okay, first of all, I love Moderna, and we are so, so grateful. And Moderna is a real embodiment of the Massachusetts success story. So coming out of university and then starting here, and then solving a huge problem for the world with the COVID vaccine and saving millions of lives, and having a brand new headquarters that the governor and I were at the opening in Cambridge, but then now having manufacturing sites all over the state, employing people of all kinds of backgrounds, including people who don't have college degrees. I mean, so Moderna, we are so grateful for all of you. So a couple things. One is that, so I think all of us, but especially me, I say this all the time to the team, I don't take it lightly. Every dollar we have in the state is taxpayer money. I don't take that lightly. So constantly I'm thinking about how do we maximize the ROI on every dollar of state money? How do we maximize the impact? This is precious resource that we've been entrusted by the people of Massachusetts. How do we get the biggest bang for the buck? So when we invest in programs, and we have all kinds of programs throughout the state, we look all the time at how is the program designed, what are the criteria? There's usually very clear scoring mechanisms with all kinds of different metrics you have to fill out. And then when we award them, we look at what are the results. So for example, I just pick on Moderna, for example. One of the things Moderna has benefited a ton from with the manufacturing is that we, through our quasi, the Mass Life Sciences, we give out tax incentives, which means that you can save money on your state taxes. The tax incentives are pegged to every employee. So we know if you hire an employee, what the average salary will be, and we know if that employee lives in Massachusetts, how much they're going to pay in taxes over X number of years. And so we give you a tax incentive, but the ROI is massively clear because we know how much incentive we're giving you, and we know how much that employee is going to pay in taxes and how much Moderna is going to pay in taxes. So it's like a massive ROI. And we check. If you didn't create the employee, we claw the tax incentive back, and you don't get it. So this is like the type of stuff we do. The other thing we do is we look at, I look at all the time, and I just asked the team to do this again, but I look at income. So we are the fourth most income unequal state. Very embarrassing. This is a number I think about all the time. And we are the highest income per capita state, but one of the most unequal. When you look at the sources of where we are unequal, it's by educational background. We're trying to do a lot there on workforce. It's by ethnicity, which is terrible, and we're doing a lot of work there. It's also a lot by geography. So if you live in Boston, Cambridge, your average income is 2x or more than if you live in central or western Mass. And so one of the things we think a lot about is, so I asked the team to do this analysis again from yesterday, is when we give out grants, are the grants going disproportionately to the places that have lower income so that we can lift those businesses up and create higher paying jobs in those areas, which is why Moderna's plants are not in Boston, Cambridge for many reasons. But that's something that we look at all the time. So this is a really important question for us, is how do we use our state resources in the highest impact way to lift everyone across the state and to continue to get richer as a state, but also will we do that to close the income inequality gap, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can't use for all of the things that we invest in, you can't just use the money to put it to profit, to the bottom line. We check to make sure you said you're gonna buy this equipment and it was gonna make you more efficient, you're gonna employ more workers, did you buy the equipment? So there's a lot of auditing that goes on.
Yeah. That question is a great question, and I would just say from the Biden administration point of view, if your end game was just to crowd in private sector investment for semiconductors or clean energy, you'd say hands down, we've already won. They brought in almost, we got
TSMC.
Right, $500 billion across semiconductor and clean energy. But of course, that's not the only goal, right? That is not, we care about how we get there. We care about the quality jobs. So conditionalities have been put on these grants in terms of, stock buyback and things like that. So I also think the other key point is accessibility. So your geographic point, but also, I'm involved with a nonprofit in Dorchester, the Possible Zone.
Yeah.
And they are trying to create this new pipeline for high school kids. And the fact is if you don't see that job in front of you or understand how you get there, kids fall off the cliff at high school. We need to build that pathway for folks into these jobs. And again, I think the state is doing a great job. Yes, one more question.
Hey, a lot of what you're talking about actually hits with me because I'm from Central California. I'm a small systems integrator there, and California has very similar types of things that you're talking about. So my question is, from a state level or even a federal level, how are the states sharing these best practices or insights that you're gaining to kind of bring us all together on improving manufacturing?
Yeah, no, I love that. So I am a big fan of working as a team. There's actually an organization, I didn't know this, I wasn't in state government, there's an organization that brings together all the state economic development secretaries. So we get together 2 or 3 times a year, and we just talk about different kind of cross-cutting issues around manufacturing, around workforce training, around AI, around climate, around housing has been a big topic, transportation has been a big topic. So our next meeting's coming up in Phoenix in December, and it's a great opportunity to share and get ideas. I also go out of my way to, so I went to Taiwan in August. There was a trip sponsored by the Taiwanese government where they invited all state economic development people. So it was fascinating. I was there for, going to visit companies and meeting with government people in Taiwan, along with people from Illinois and Texas and Florida and Pennsylvania and Maryland. And then we're sitting on the bus talking about what is your state doing. So there's a lot more in common. And I actually just yesterday talked to the Secretary of Commerce in Rhode Island, and I talk a lot to the Secretary of Commerce in Connecticut. We try to work together. We have more in common than we do apart, and we're all trying to do the right things. I will say, I didn't realize, again, I wasn't in government. The states are really different. They're so different in how they operate. So we have a lot of common issues that we share and talk a lot about, but we are really different in how the states operate. I come back from all of these conversations, and no offense against California, and actually the former secretary is someone I know from California, but we are lucky to be in Massachusetts. We have a very high-functioning state. We're very well governed. We've had Republican governors, Democratic governors. Everyone's pretty reasonable. We have a very strong balance sheet. We don't have crazy amounts of debt. We have a legislature that is full-time, very actively engaged, and really takes it seriously and is trying to do the right things. And we have just wicked, awesome people working in state government who don't make a ton of money, don't have equity, don't have IPOs, don't have bonuses, but they just care deeply about this mission. So we are really lucky in our state. And because we are a wealthier state and we have done well, we have resources that we can deploy to try to really make sure that we lead in these areas. And I think the other thing I would say that we're really lucky about is we have a history, and I think Governor Healy is very committed to continuing this and to lead for the future, where we want to not just lead economically, but we want to lead in the right ways. So we want to lead by having the best businesses and the best manufacturing and the best, job growth and the best economy. But we want to do it because we're solving important problems, and we want to be fighting climate change and improving people's lives. And we want to be a place where we celebrate letting you love who you want to love, letting women like me control my bodies, embracing immigration, embracing science, and trying to make sure that we take care of our communities. That's what we're trying to do here. And we're nice because we're a big enough state that we matter. We're $750 billion GDP. We're bigger than Ireland. We're a third the size of Canada. But we're a small enough state that I think what you'll find, like at the mashup too, and here at this event, everyone wants to help each other. We're big enough that we have lots of interesting things going on and lots of super smart, wicked smart people, but everyone is 1 or 2 or 3 degrees separated, and everybody wants to help each other win. And so I talk a lot about our team, Massachusetts, and I do share a lot with other states, and I always come back and think, we have work cut out for us. We have work to do here in our state, but boy, am I lucky to be on this team, and we're so lucky to have so many of you here. So thank you so much. And Liz at the top of that list. We are so lucky to have Liz and Natan and Tulip and all of you guys here.
Wow. Well, we are all so grateful and lucky to have you as our secretary, and also I think not just for the state, but for the country. So with that, please join me in thanking Secretary Hao.
Thank you all.